Hey guys, welcome to the video presentation of Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Now in this video presentation, I'm going to teach you the universal principles of persuasion that you can use to hook customers to your products or services. So what's important to know is that I'm going to try to give this presentation in the viewpoint of online marketing, meaning that if you watch this presentation and you're a business owner or you're a marketeer or a salesperson, you're going to be able to promote your product or your service the best way on online social media channels. Okay, so before we dive into the content, I really want to give you the context of this book or this presentation. Now, as you know, there is a lot of information. The 21st century, guys, is really the century of information overload, right? We have so much information to handle. Not only do we have email, we also have social media, we have websites, we have Netflix, we have Wikipedia, we have Google, we have so much sources of information that there's just an overload that we can't actually make a proper decision about a product or a service. So what Robert Cialdini says is that people take shortcuts in order to decide about a product or a service. And as marketeers or as salespeople, we need to know these shortcuts. We need to understand the cues based on which people make decisions about products or services. And that is what we are going to do in this video. I'm going to teach you which weapons of influence or which principles of persuasion you can use to make people hooked to your product or services. All right? Now, before we dive into the content, I really want to give you an overview of who is Robert Cialdini. Now, Robert Cialdini is a very experimented guy who dedicated his life to research regarding influence and persuasion. So as a kid, he had a very keen interest in everything that was dealing with psychology to understanding human behavior, and quickly he became a New York Times best-selling author. So he wrote tons of books on this topic, such as influence, but also persuasion, and yes, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive. So this guy knows a lot about his niche, about his understanding about influence and persuasion. And he's also the most cited social psychologist in the world. So Robert Cialdini knows what he's talking about in his book. And I'm going to do my best to deliver his thoughts to you in the best possible way. All right, so what are the 6 universal principles of persuasion? You've probably been waiting for this, and that's what we're going to cover in this presentation. So stick around. But before we dive into this, I want to warn you that the right use of these principles is really an art form. There is no such thing as using these principles too much, because excessive use can lead to envy and hate according to other people. So you want to find a nice balance in using these principles. Also know that poor use can lead to less success in your life. If you don't use these principles at all, you will have less chances of finding your dream job or negotiating a better salary, finding a better job, or increasing your sales in your business. So you have to find a nice balance between using these principles in your life. Now, the first rule of persuasion is reciprocity. According to Cialdini, this is one of the most potent weapons of influence around us. Now, the rule of reciprocity says that every person has a natural tendency to repay in kind what another person has provided him or her. Now, studies have found that this rule is overpowering, meaning that even if we don't know the requester of the favor, we're gonna feel a need to repay something or to give something back to that person, all right? So a great example I typically use is Coca-Cola, right? So let's say Coca-Cola comes out with a new soft drink. You are walking around in the train station while suddenly a beautiful young Coca-Cola representative approaches you and offers you a free sample, right? So what are you gonna do? You are probably feel the need to return something back, whether that it's making a future purchase or fill out a survey or something else, right? So this is the power of reciprocity. We feel an urge, a need to repay something that we've been given, right? That is the rule of reciprocity. Now, how can you use reciprocity in your online marketing efforts? How can you use reciprocity to promote your services online or your product online? Well, you have to give free value. If you give free value, you will receive back. That is what the rule of reciprocity basically says. Now, what you can do, for example, and this is something I did for a long time, is give a free analysis of the online visibility of a company. For example, I still run an online marketing agency, and I used to give free analysis of the online visibility of a company. And what would happen was I would give these free analysis in video format. I would send them to a potential customer, and then these people, 1 out of 3, converted into a client because they would feel the urge to repay something. They would feel the urge to buy my services because I gave them something valuable for free, right? But there's other examples of reciprocity that you can use, such as giving people access to your free trial, or giving them a PDF file, an ebook, maybe you give them a webinar training. Everything that is free and valuable to your customers will eventually be paid back in the future by another activity of your potential customer, right? The second rule of persuasion, or the second principle of persuasion, is commitment and consistency. Cialdini explains that this rule refers to our nearly obsessive desire to be and to appear consistent with what we have previously said, done, or promised. So once we have made a choice or taken a stand, we will encounter personal and interpersonal pressures to behave consistently with that commitment. So what happens, guys, is that people in general dislike to be inconsistent. Cialdini, the author, states that this is because inconsistency is often thought to be an undesirable personality trait. The person whose words, beliefs, and deeds don't match may be seen as indecisive, confused, or even mentally ill. On the other side, people with a high degree of consistency are often associated with personal and intellectual strength. It gives you a sense of logic, rationality, stability, and honesty about that person, right? Now, how can you apply the principle of commitment and consistency in your online marketing efforts, right? I'm going to give you a process, a 3-step process that you can use to apply this to your business and promote your services or products online. The first one is that you have to create an initial commitment amongst your target audience or persona, right? Everything starts with the initial commitment. So once a potential buyer commits to a certain request or an action, it becomes easier to gain later compliance through consistency pressure. For example, you can create an initial commitment of letting someone sign up for your webinar. That is an initial commitment. So once someone has signed up for your webinar, you want to put or increase the consistency pressures on him. In other words, once your prospect has taken a stand, he or she will have a natural tendency to behave in ways that are stubbornly consistent with that stance. In other words, the automatic consistency response will kick in. So you really have to think about this in your business. How can you give something for free and make those consistency pressures a real thing? And eventually, you want to achieve your goal. You want to close the sale. Now, a very good example I typically refer to is this guy, Sam Ovens. Sam Ovens is an internet persona. You probably have seen his ads on Facebook, but he helps people build and maintain highly profitable consulting businesses. And he has a webinar. You have to check it out. Just go to consulting.com and you will get access to his webinar. And his webinar is a prime example of the commitment and consistency principle. He uses the exact call to actions, the exact pressures, and the exact commitments that are necessary to convert a lead or someone who doesn't know him into a paying customer. So really go check that out if you want to learn about this principle, or if you want to learn how to be better at using the commitment and consistency principle. All right? The third principle of persuasion is social proof. Now, social proof refers to the innate tendency of people to follow the actions of other people when making decisions. The best example I can give you guys is the pizza place around the corner, right? The pizza place where everyone goes to when there has something to be eaten, right? So you probably realized, or you probably have seen this, when there is a long line waiting outside of a food place, that more people are flocking to that line. And why is that? That is because of the power of social proof. We automatically are wired to make decisions about a product if we think or we perceive that product as valuable or valuably seen by other people, right? So if other people value a product, then there's a high chance that I also will value that product, right? So this is the power of social proof. Now, how can you use social proof in your online marketing efforts? How can you utilize social proof to make your product stand out online? Now, the first one is testimonials and reviews. You want to make sure that you have a lot of good reviews about your product and that you showcase that online. For example, if you run a restaurant, you want a lot of good reviews on TripAdvisor, and you want to showcase those reviews on your other social media channels, on Facebook, on Google, on Instagram, etc. A second tactic that you can use in promoting your services or products online is celebrity endorsements, right? So you can use celebrity endorsements or industry experts to promote your product online. The social power of these people is enormous, guys. This is what is called influencer marketing, right? So a simple share on Instagram or Facebook by these people can suddenly reach and influence millions of people. So you have to really get to know these people and make them share your product. And a third tactic that you can use to increase the social proof of your product and make it stand out online is real-time stats and notifications. This is really interesting if you are familiar with WordPress. I use this plugin called Proven, and Proven is a simple plugin that you can install on WordPress that leverages social proof to increase your conversions. So how it works is very simple. Whenever someone purchases something on your website or signs up for something, then people see notification on your website, right? So it's a great way to showcase that other people like your product, and it makes other people more willing to buy your product as well. So these three tactics keep in mind in your online business or online marketing strategy. The fourth principle of persuasion is liking. Now, the rule of liking states that we have an innate human tendency to consent or agree with someone we like. This means that we are most preferring to say yes to the requests of someone we know and like. Now, what makes us like other people? Social scientists have found that there are a couple of factors that increase the likability or liking of a person, right? So the number one is physical attractiveness. This may sound harsh, but this is just truth. So we tend to like and therefore comply with people who are physically attractive. Number two, similarity. We like people who are similar to us. This holds true for all possible areas such as background, opinions, interests, character traits, or even lifestyle. Number three, compliments. People are phenomenal suckers for compliments as long as they are honest. And number four, contact and cooperation. People like things or other people that are familiar to them. The more you get in contact with a prospect, for example, in a positive and cooperative way, the higher the chances of compliance. So how can you apply those principles in your life? Well, a great read that I personally recommend to everyone is How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read that book, really check it out, because this talks about how to make other people like you more based on the principles that we've seen here, okay? Now, how can you apply liking to your business or to your online marketing efforts? Now, I want to categorize them based on the factors that we've seen. First of all, physical attractiveness. Try to look your best. Really simple, right? But you really want to look your best. This means that you want to be well-groomed, you want to smell nice, you want to dress for the occasion if you present yourself or your product to your potential customer. Second one, similarity. Know your audience and highlight similarities. If you know your prospect and you know what you have in common, like for example, common interests, common background, or you have common character traits or opinions, now you want to highlight these in your conversation to be able to be liked more. Number three, compliments. Try to compliment your leads or your clients. If you have the opportunity to compliment them, don't neglect it. Do it, because that will help you being liked more. Okay, as long as it is honest, right? So you don't want to make fake compliments. No, you have to be honest in your compliments. And number four, create familiarity. You want to be as cooperative, as familiar to your prospect or your client as possible, right? So you have to meet up with your prospect or your client as much as possible and really create a familiar atmosphere with your client so you can be liked more. All right? So this is how you can apply liking to your business and online marketing efforts. Okay? The fifth principle of persuasion is authority. So according to Cialdini, people have a deep-seated sense of duty to authority within them. So we are trained from young off or from birth that obedience to proper authority is right and disobedience is wrong. As you grow up, for example, you listen to your parents, you listen to the school system, to your teachers, and later you listen to the laws of your country, right? So the author emphasizes the fact that following an established authority is not necessarily a bad thing. On the contrary, it can provide us with a valuable shortcut for deciding how to act in a situation. So the principle of authority, guys, has been found in a study called the Milgram experiment in 1961. I'm not going to dive deeper into this a whole experiment. You have to give it a quick Google. But this experiment basically found that we have a natural tendency to follow the orders of an authoritative figure above us, right? So go Google that experiment. Now, here is where it gets tricky, guys. People are often as vulnerable to the symbols of authority as to the substance of authority. Now, if you want to scale your personal brand online, you might want to consider these symbols. As marketers, it's important that you use these items when you can actually back them up with evidence. So in other words, use them when you have deserved them. One example is titles. In the online world of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, it's very easy nowadays to give yourself a title. Don't call yourself an expert when you aren't. Only when you've built up a significant track record of customer successes, then can you start to think about this symbol and use it for compliance purposes, but only when you deserve it. A second thing, or a second symbol item, is clothing. Clothing is a second authority symbol that can trigger mechanical compliance. Finely styled and expensive clothes carry an aura of status and position. When you are in a position to afford nice clothes, it's definitely worth it. But if you don't, then don't buy it. Okay? A third thing is, or a third symbol is trappings. This means everything from jewelry to expensive cars or other luxury items. Only afford them if you can, guys. Don't put yourself in debt to buy these symbols or make these symbols yours when you actually can back it up, okay? So I just want you to know that these symbols are as powerful as the real substance of authority. People evaluate these symbols to make decisions about products or services. Now, how can you apply the principle of authority to your online marketing efforts? First of all, you want to be able to make a lot of good and consistent content. Okay, so content is really how you show your authority or your expertise in your field. How can you do that? For example, by making blogs or making vlog about your service or your product. Okay, that is one method. A second thing is using titles and certificates to boost your products or services. And a third thing, of course, and that is highly valuable, is the amount of followers you have. People nowadays look at the amount of followers a business or a personal brand has in order to make a decision about a product or a service, okay? So you want to make sure that you're increasing your amount of followers in a legal and a well-put way. So one guy that does this tremendously well is Grant Cardone. So Grant Cardone is a sales master and he built a really strong brand around sales, negotiation, and persuasion, right? So if you look him up, you will see that he makes a lot of content and a lot of videos and blogs, that he owns a lot of titles and certificates, and that he also tries to sell them on those certificates, right? And he also has a lot of followers. So you can definitely give him a Google and try learning from this guy if you want to improve your online marketing efforts. The sixth rule of persuasion is scarcity. And there's a good quote that really summarizes this principle, and that is by Chesterton. And he says, "The way to love anything is to realize that it might be lost." And this really summarizes the principle of scarcity. So people really hate to lose freedoms. This is why Booking uses this simple principle in their marketing efforts, right? You've probably experienced the following, right? So you go to Booking, you try to book a room, and then suddenly you get a notification that there's only one room left. Now, why does Booking does this? Because Booking knows, and psychologists know this, that people have an innate resistance against the constraint of free choice. Whenever we feel like our choices are limited or constrained, then we will feel resistance and we will want to make or have that product more actively, right? So this is what psychologists call the psychological reactance theory. We just hate to lose freedoms. So this is why the scarcity principle is so powerful. And you've probably noticed the principle that Booking is using. So how can you apply scarcity to your online marketing efforts? Now, there's two ways. Number one is the limited number tactic. You've probably seen this. Amazon uses this consistently. It works well for e-commerce businesses, right? So, for example, you can state on your web page or landing page that you only have a limited amount of products in your stock, right? You see here that Amazon says only 2 left in stock, more on the way. Now, Amazon does this because it knows that people who face scarcity will want to buy that item more rapidly, okay? So it really helps in selling your product effectively and faster. A second tactic is the deadline tactic. This works better for online courses or online services, and it basically means that you use a deadline to help people get your product faster, right? So people will feel an urge to buy your product if they know it's not going to be there forever. This really helps in getting people sign up for your course or for your service more rapidly, the deadline tactic, all right? So you can use this on WordPress. There's plugins to do this, but you can also hire a designer to make you help or implement this principle. So to conclude, guys, our world gets more and more complex since the amount of data and information increases. So the result is that people will rely on these shortcuts, these 6 shortcuts that we just discussed, more and more. That's what it's all about. Like, there's so much information and we will make shortcuts more often. So that's why these 6 principles or these 6 weapons of influence for you as a marketer become more and more important. Okay, so you want to keep a track of these principles. You want to use them, but in a moderate way. So you have to take advantage of these principles, but with moderation. As I've said, guys, it's not that you have to use these principles every single day and make excessive use of these principles, because as I said, people will hate you for it. Like, there's a limit to the use of these principles, right? So you have to use them in moderation, okay? But you still have to use them, of course. All right? So if you have still any questions or remarks, you can send them to Anthony@PerezContentHub.com, which is my business email. I will answer them as soon as I can. And I really hope you enjoyed this seminar. I really hope you learned something, and I hope you apply some of these principles to your life. I will also send you the written book summary together with this presentation, so you can consult it at any time when you are available or when you have time to check it out. Okay? I hope it helped, and I hope to see you next time, guys. Cheers.